So everybody, thank you. I just wanted to thank my two wonderful friends that are coming on the show tonight. We're going to be talking about a subject that a lot of us have been talking about around the globe, and that is the reptilian agenda or the reptilian mind. Here to join me tonight is my friend Justin Deschamps of Stillness and Storm, and he is up in the New England area, and my friend Ginny Drake, who is in Lexington, Kentucky, and she is of Revisions. So pretty excited about having them on and having this discussion. We've been talking about it for quite some time. Welcome, guys. Welcome.
Welcome. I'm glad to be here.
Yes, good to be here.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And it's good to have us all here. So I think what we wanted to do is we wanted to kind of define, because a lot of people have different ideas of what the reptilian agenda is, and I think it might be a good idea to kind of define that for everybody. What do you think? I
think it's wonderful, because I don't think it's like what people think it is by any means. But you go through it, and I'll intervene, or you tell me what you think it is.
Sounds good. Well, the way I look at it is that there is always the reptilian mind within all of us, and for us to point at somebody and say it's them, that would mean we wouldn't recognize that part of ourselves. And it's very important, as all three of us have talked many times, to recognize these aspects of ourselves and honor them. And I think when we don't honor them, and it's when it runs rampant and it has a lot of fear. And when it has a lot of fear, it actually controls us. Or when it's lost in fear, I guess is the better choice of words. So the reptilian mind is actually within us, and it's actually a part of the chemistry of our brain, or the organic part of our brain. And that is the limited part of ourselves, or some would say the physical part of ourselves that doesn't see the fullness of who we are, the wholeness of who we are, body, mind, and soul. So if we're just operating from that sense of ourselves, we're always going to be afraid. We're always going to see everything as working against us. We're always going to see things as causing health issues, pain, and we're going to look at everything else as opposed to looking within. So to me, it's what keeps us from looking within and becoming whole. Justin, what do you think?
Yeah, I think, if we just look at from a biological perspective, the reptilian brain is in charge of the fight or flight response, which is, the R complex of the brain, where we go when we get afraid. So if we're pushed into a state of fear, usually because of an emotionally intense situation, this is when the brain literally doesn't process information in the neocortex, where we actually do a lot of our critical thinking, our holistic thinking. It does it from a reactionary point of view. It's almost like the future is blocked off in this level of consciousness, and we can only process things from what we've known in the past, which is usually fearful things, because the past is filled with the unknown. So when we're stepping into this idea of a reptilian agenda in like a really general sense, it's this idea that there's an agenda out there that wants people to stay in this very simple, fear-based consciousness. And you never even step into that emotional center of the limbic brain and then fuse the two to form the neocortex, where you actually create, real intelligence and things like this. So.
Absolutely. And that was a great explanation from both of you. But I've also seen, and this is where I think a lot of people are getting some understandings, but they don't understand how it really works. When they get into that chemistry of the reptilian mind, they also can shapeshift. And there is a shapeshift, and it does look very reptilian. It gets very dark. And I have clients who will say, I saw this man get so mad he looked almost monstrous. Well, yes, because he's hitting that reptilian mind, and all of that adrenaline, all that food, that stuff, that chemistry is coming in, and they do change. They shapeshift. I see shapeshifters. And I said that on your site, Justin. I said, I have seen the reptilian. In fact, we all three have seen the reptilian, because we had a workshop at your place, Justin. Do you remember that one that stood in the middle with me?
Yes.
And remember how it scared everybody?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Everybody turned their backs. Jeremy was the only one that, and I had to hold her very still. It was like having a wild animal right there in front of me, because if I did not respond as firm and strong as she was, she would have eaten me up. And you know it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yep.
And that's where, some people would call that an exorcism. Some people would call that, a devil, a demon. But that is real. But it really is from the reptilian mind, and it really does push all that chemistry in, and it does make them shapeshift. So you do see shapeshifters. I see reptilian all the time. I have a reptilian. If I got really mad many, many years ago, I had it. So I think we need to help people understand it's real, but it lives within us. It's not this, now, yes, and I've listened to James Bartlett as well, and he talks about how they use mind control to insert, and I agree with him with that. I definitely agree with him, because haven't you ever been standing there or listening or not doing anything and just a really crazy thought? Like one time I remember I had a crazy thought like, why don't I just kill myself? Mm-hmm. Now, I wasn't thinking about suicide, not attempting to make suicide, but it came back and said, why don't you just make the world a lot better place and just end it here? Now, where was that? Who inserted that?
Right.
Was that an outside source that's inserted it? Or was that a part of me that's always been laying around and it just needed the energy to come forward?
I think either way, whether it's mind control from chemtrails or whatever it happens to be, for you and your experience, that was a real event, regardless.
Yes, it was.
So you had to process that. So just wanted to
yes.
That.
Well, I think that's really.
But this is where I want people. What? Go on.
I was just saying, I think it's really important to talk about that a little bit, because we all come up with these ideas of something, and then we hear somebody else's experience, and we want to say, oh, that's incorrect because my experience says this. I think it's important really for us to understand, and I think this is actually what the reptilian agenda wants us to do, is that it says that if Jenny says it's her way, and Justin, you brought up a really good point, that for her experience, that is very real for her. And so for her, that's real. And so for somebody to come along and say, no, but my experience doesn't say that, that's what the agenda wants us to do. It wants us to bicker and say that this person's wrong, that I'm right, and then so on and so on. So we constantly have separation. And when you have separation, then there is no connection of wholeness to God, spirit, universe, oneness, wholeness, or whatever you want to refer to it. And so that blocks us from love. It blocks us from unison or unity, or what we're trying to accomplish here, and what you're trying to accomplish, Justin, and what I'm trying to accomplish, and what Jenny's trying to accomplish, and many, many people out there that are doing this work. This agenda or this consciousness or this dark shadow consciousness, reptilian consciousness, whatever we want to refer to, wants us to stay at odds with each other. And because if we stay at odds with each other, then we never work in unison with each other. So I think that's exactly so. If then we're disempowered, as Jenny was talking about with Firehouse Subs earlier. They lost their power, so they were not in power. Yeah. And it's very interesting when you look at the synchronicity and the symbols.
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. When you look, like I said, I could have. What happened to me today, and I'll tell the audience, is I went into the Firehouse Sub, and I'd never been there. Something led us there because we've been doing a lot of spiritual work anyway, so it just led us there. I had never been there, and I was kind of excited about eating there. And I left my purse sitting on a chair and just totally left it. Didn't think about it. Usually Spirit does, but I know there's a reason for that. Also, my reason of losing $140, because when they called me, I ran up immediately and realized that, but if you look at everything, why didn't they call me immediately? They didn't call me until an hour later, and there was nobody in there when we were there. There were only 3 customers. So there was something that went on. And I call that, there's decisions and choice making there. But when I got there, I got my purse, ran out, and realized that I had been, somebody had stolen $140 out of my purse. And I immediately came back, and I thought it was so interesting when they said, we don't have power. And I thought, no, you don't. You have no power of your soul at all. And just the events, how I handled it was a much higher consciousness. I didn't get mad. I just got really straight about it. I said, I will be calling the corporate office, I will be calling the owner, and I will be calling the manager. And in this process of learning all these different people, I've learned out, there's a video that I can call for and ask for them to look at their security cameras. And, this is from another manager. And some really good things transpired. And then I put it on Facebook. A lot of people, I didn't ask for them to be beat up. I didn't ask for them to hate them. I asked for them to pray for them, which is a whole different experience in energy, because you're not spewing out poison. You're asking for a consciousness rising. Instead of taking the low road, I took the high road by bringing in the prayer warriors, speaking about my truth. I will hold these people accountable, but I also will love them in prayer. Whoever they are. Obviously, they were desperate enough to have. They weren't thinking if there is, security cameras in a restaurant. These people weren't thinking. That's just typical, but that is the lower consciousness agenda. Now, I could have gone into low consciousness with them, but I chose to go the higher road, and that's through what Spirit was telling me to say. I mean, literally was saying, you need to go here, you need to go there. And I found out everything about that organization within 35 to 40 minutes. I didn't know anybody. I just kept following the yellow brick road until I got to the right answer. So that's also how being in flow with something is correct. And we need to help people learn flow, and not react. Because that's what you said, Justin. Instead of using the reactorial part of our brain, we're using the consciousness of the now and working through the now of it.
Right, exactly.
Does that make sense? Yeah, it's a great lesson.
Makes perfect sense.
See, and we've got a lot of people that don't understand this process at all. Just like when I said, I heard a voice. I've heard voices all my life, and those were some of the voices. What made this voice? I'm sitting on the corner of my couch like I do every day in prayer, and it just rolled through. I mean, I had no mind. It was mindless. And this voice, and it was nasty. And it said, why don't you just kill yourself? But I recognized that voice because I gave a life to it in another way. So when I hear that, I go, oh, and I know immediately that's my inner child. That's something that's telling me that I don't love about myself.
Yep.
That's something giving me an opportunity to say, why would you say that about yourself, dear? Because it opens up avenues and rooms and consciousness that you are never allowing ourselves to open because we're too afraid to listen to that voice. And we're not listening to it.
No, I was just thinking you're reminding me of something that Justin and I talked about when he was here in Florida. And we were talking about the times when he and I were partying, and the voices that the part of ourselves that for a long time that voice kept on saying, if you just do it, it's not that big of a deal if you do it on occasion.
Oh, yes.
And, the voice.
That was me in sex.
That was you in what? Sex?
When I was in college. Oh, what's the deal? He's a nice guy.
Right, yeah.
You sell your soul to that voice.
Right, and we kept and you get caught up in this rat race. And even it's not even just with sex and drugs. It's also with, you're driving home, you've been busy, you've been working all day, you're tired, and something just says, Jeremy, it's not that big of a deal. You stop and get Wendy's. I mean, it's really fast, and you're hungry, and you don't have to cook anything when you get home. And I know it makes you feel awful, a couple hours later, but it's not that big of a deal. I know you've ate it 7 days this last 7 days.
You're going by.
Yeah, you're driving by. You might as well just
anyway.
And I know Justin says that high fructose corn syrup is not good for you, but it's not that big of a deal. But all of that stuff, whether it is or isn't, that voice in you is just trying to convince you of whether it's healthy for you or healthy for you not. It's tearing you apart inside, because then you go do it and then you feel guilty about it. And so whatever decision you are, it's like Jenny's saying, being in flow. If it happens in flow, then it's of your divineness. If it doesn't, and you have to force yourself or convince yourself, then that's the reptilian part of you that's saying, it's not that big of a deal. I realize that person just dropped $50, and they'll never know.
Yeah, oh, there you go. There you go, right there.
And
Or I really would like to kill that bitch. You know, that's what it would like you to. I'd really kill that bitch. I could kill that bitch. And then you go, and then there's a voice, go on and kill it. Kill that bitch. And it's like, is it worth it? Because who's the bitch? One finger pointing, three fingers pointing back. So it's given me an opportunity to look back at my bitch, not theirs.
And I
because it's an inside job. Absolutely.
And I bring that up because one of my new hires actually dropped a $50 at a Circle K. And,
really?
and a man behind her said, ma'am, you dropped your $50. And I thought to myself, he could have just as easily grabbed that and walked off with it.
Mm-hmm.
And she would have She would have never thought anything of it. And interesting enough, I did this diversity course that I wrote that I think I told you both about. And I did the pilot today. And so in that, I do all this stuff about, I did the simulation to actually cause feelings in them, feelings of inadequacy, feelings of, being measured against, societal norms and stuff like that. And it's really meant to cause the person to have an array of emotions. And then I go into stereotyping and how we look at people and judge people based on preconceived notions. And then of course everybody's like, oh, I don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow!
So then I spell it out to them, and I only give them yes or no questions to ask. Jenny, this is your fault because I learned this from you. And then I ask them yes or no questions. Have you ever been a part of making a joke about somebody, whether laughing or doing the joke about their age or about what they're wearing or about their speech or about how they talk? And of course they can only do a yes or no answer. And you could just hear somebody says, well, what if this happens? It's not a what if, it's a yes or no. And they're sitting there and you can just tell. And then one person says, you're not going to hate us based on what we write here, are you? I said, I'm not going to hate you. How do you feel about yourself?
Right.
And then I said, this is not about self-criticism. This is about self-awareness. And let's take a look at it. And it's just a way for you to take all those tools and all those things we discussed that you said that you didn't do, and now you're bringing it down and bringing it home. And we have to think about even the jokes that we say, because the jokes are judgment and avoidance of what the truth is. And the truth is, we're not coming together and working together. We're judging each other. And that the reptilian mind wants us to be in judgment of each other, and it wants us to not.
Well, to keep us separated. So, that's what separation is. That's what hell's all about, is separation.
Mm-hmm. And we're not separated. We have software like Zoom, so we can talk on camera like this.
That's right. Except for when I don't have any audio.
Well, you know what? And we needed a team to work together because I was trying to fix the computer, and Justin says, "Sure, she can call on phone."
Aren't we glad it took three of us to figure it out?
That's right.
Really, it took two because I didn't figure it out. I sat down and thought, oh, my gosh. That's a reptilian agenda for me. Tell Jenny you're going to have to get on the computer and figure it out. Oh, that is like, oh, no. Jump out of your body and run. You know, I'm 64 and I love my age, but this is like, we were talking about this, and this is way off the subject, but yet it's still a reptilian agenda of the age group in my time. And everybody was talking about, what do you think about this computer stuff? How you doing it? One person said, I don't even go near it. It was like it was a beast or something. And I started laughing. And I said, well, I go near it, but I said, I've destroyed it every time I get a chance. So it's what we do to ourselves. We do it to ourselves.
Absolutely. Right.
Are you all listening? Okay.
These things are here, technology being one of them. And, you know, if we can use it to our advantage, then great. But if we don't, then we're the only one who suffers.
It's hell.
You know? And
well, that's another separation.
Right.
See, that's separation right there. Because I remember if I said something, somebody would say, you don't know how to do that, and how small I'd feel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Real oppressed by the whole thing. Then one day I said, you know, I don't know how. That's why I probably have got you as a friend. Can you come over my house and fix it? And they go, ooh.
So Justin,
you know, you got to come back with, you know, when they say those things, we've got to be able to come back with an idea back to them about not being mean or mad, saying that's one finger pointing. Where's that in you?
You know, Justin, you can actually talk from a lot more experience in this than probably we can. We talked a lot about this when you guys were in Morocco, and we were in the concept. Let's just give an example of Americans and what we think about other countries. And I remember when you guys were moving over there, and I thought to myself, Morocco, you're going to move to a Muslim country, and then when you guys actually opened my eyes up to this, because you went over there and you said, no, Jared, it's not like that, you know, and these people are very loving and caring, and I remember Julian said that they were stuck in the 1950s as far as technology goes, but you know, we get these ideas because, and some would call that ignorance, because we don't have the necessary knowledge, or we haven't experienced it. And I think you can probably talk more about that as far as going to other countries or other parts of the world.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, like Julian, what he said was that, you know, it's like traveling back in time to the 1950s, because back then, and I don't even know, but just gleaming from what I know in history, is people were
much from the 1950s.
Right, so you can testify.
So tell me about it.
Well, people were more interconnected, you know, like in Morocco, there were cabs everywhere, you know, people could take cabs, and that was a very easy thing to do. People shared rides, and, you know, if somebody didn't have a car, then people in the neighborhood kind of banded together, in some places, not everywhere, to help the person out. Or there were a lot of coffee shops, or everybody knew somebody who could get everything you needed. And there was just that organic web of interconnection in humanity that I noticed was gone here because of whatever reason. I mean, we could talk about it probably for a whole show, but, you know, technology and things like this, they've created all these layers of separation, you know, and going into a more simple way of life brings people together. It's, at least it seemed to in Morocco. So
well, I agree with you. I definitely agree. Because when I went to South America when I was 19, I lived there for a month with a family, and I had never experienced men kissing men in the lips. Never. This was in the early 70s. Grown men, you know, that were married, and you know, I never saw that, and I thought, oh my gosh. At first, I was astounded by it, because they really did. It was like women, when we meet each other, we would kiss each other. And it was like, it was a grown man. And I came back home and told my mother, I said, I want men to start kissing each other. Remember, she said, what? And I said, because I want them to embrace each other as we are allowed to embrace each other as women. I noticed that immediately in the country, because it was so relaxed. And now there, it's very obvious. You're very, very rich, or you're very, very poor. Now, I happen to be with the very, very rich. But I saw some devastations that I never saw in our country until now. I've never seen so many poor. You know, there was a lot of poor in Colombia. I went to Colombia, and it opened my eyes. But then I went to where the very rich were, where there were yachts. And there was totally, you could see the two differences, and the separation was for sure. You know, there was no doubt there was a separation. But what an experience for a 19-year-old little girl to come in from college the first year. And I remember the people in Versailles, when they would say, well, were they dark skinned? No, they were not. The people I were with was, you know, they were blondish, reddish, darker hair, you know, auburns, but beautiful blue eyes and hazel eyes. Now, your natives were darker. But it was like people from Versailles would ask for me to say, they would say, was that Columbia, Kentucky? I said, no, I didn't go to Columbia, Kentucky. I went to Columbia, South America. This is how, in that time span, they couldn't imagine that I would have been in South America.
Right.
You know, it was a beautiful experience when I went, because it opened my eyes up to things I would never, ever been able to see in my lifetime. And I am so graced to have that opportunity. And I'm sure you felt the same way when you went to Morocco, because didn't it give you the impression in South America at the time about Americans was funny as hell. I was in. I had big, you know, I was a big girl, big boobs, big ass, and they loved me. In the States, everybody wanted to go like Twiggy. So, you know, I loved South America. I didn't want to leave because all the men thought I was best. So,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just in their, that's their culture. And it was just interesting to see how people, well, they thought also all Americans were blonde-headed, and they all drove Corvettes or convertibles, and we did everything by the wash because they had Tide commercials that were made in English, but they did them in Spanish, and they did everything as the Tide commercial, and that's the way they thought all the women from the States were. And they would ask me, they said, "Are you from the States?" And I said, "Yeah." They said, "And you have blonde hair?" And I said, "Do you have a convertible?" "No, I live in a 900 square foot house." You're in a bigger house than I could ever imagine being. So that's culture. That's what people think about each other. That's another separation,
Well, there's so much that, and I think that we can probably talk a little bit here about how we change this. I mean, when we accept people for souls and people, and we look at them and we realize that everybody really wants the same thing. We want to be loved. We want to be respected. We want to leave something behind for our children. We want to grow. And that's just at the basic three-dimensional level. I mean, when it comes to the soul wants to experience, and the soul wants to have love. It wants to be in flow. And I think when we start looking at things as opportunities, and it's like you said at the very beginning, Jenny, they had an opportunity to make a choice. Everything is a choice point here. So it's not about right or wrong. It's not about guilt or fear or anything like that. It's that you're at choice point. What experience do you want to have? Do you want to have an experience of, because why would somebody steal? It's more than likely from fear or lack or that feeling. So if it's from those feelings, that is not a happy, wonderful life. And
I can't imagine what they feel bad. They have to feel bad today.
I'm sure.
So. They do, because if they know anything, they think about what it feels. Well, I'll tell you why I know what they feel like, because I stole something when I was a little girl. And they shamed me. Oh, they scared me to death. I didn't do it once. I did it twice. When I was a little girl, I took something from the 5 and 10 here in Versailles, and Mr. Smith, being a big man that he was, my mother went to him when she found it and brought me back. But she'd already told Mr. Smith, she said, "Scare her to death." Well, he did. He told me, "You'll never be allowed in this store again." And I was so hurt. And it scared me. But it didn't scare me enough when I was 11 years old. I was with the wrong people in Atlanta, Georgia, and I stole fingernail polish. Didn't have any fingernails, but I stole fingernail polish and got caught. But we got caught in the largest store in Atlanta, Georgia. And I remember the way the women treated us was absolute. I was in the bathroom. They let me go to the bathroom because I was so scared I was going to pee my pants, literally. And they ganged up on me and they called me a thief. And I remember then how horrible that felt. And it made an impression for the rest of my life. I never lied or tried to steal anything ever again. I was not going to do that because the feeling was so horrible inside. And when I became a juvenile probation officer, that was one reason why I became one. Is because of that incident. Because I thought if we could catch enough children and give them the experience of what it really feels like to, steal, maybe they won't do it when they get to be adults. And that is true. That I did steal 2 times. And I remember I was in a store with a friend who was getting ready to steal something. I went into a panic attack and screamed. Scared them to death. They didn't steal anything.
And that technique of fear and trauma, although it's effective, it does achieve the results. It's part of the reptilian agenda too,
Yes, it is.
And when we're kind of in this society where we feel like the only way to get people to do what we want, which in and of itself is you need to question, is to force them using fear and intimidation. And, even though we have a good intention in doing it, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of good intentions, a lot of this stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
The other side of the coin is to tell somebody the truth, which is all of the effects, all of the consequences from doing something like that. I guess it's a little harder to do in today's world of corporate big stores, and people are like, "Oh, well, it's just nail polish, so who cares? It's the big company, right?" But at the same time, each event of wrongness creates chaos in the world, So
absolutely.
In this way, it's really simple to fix the problem. You just have to, in all of the choices you have in every moment of now that you're experiencing, you just have to find a way to do the right thing, what you think is right, as much as possible.
Yeah.
You know, and be willing to look back.
What you feel, right? Go on.
Well, just to
what
look
you
back,
feel inside.
Look back at what happened to make sure that what you did was right, was actually the right thing. You know, be honest with yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyways,
holding yourself accountable, self-awareness, and looking back at your day and saying, "Hey, you know, what could I have done there?" I mean, as a teacher and as a trainer for corporate America, I've actually used both techniques, and then of course, many years ago, this book came into my lap called "Whale Done." And it's not everybody recognizes unless you're in the corporate structure, but basically what this book is about is how we train killer whales. And what I find very interesting is when we train killer whales, we don't yell at them, we don't scream at them, we don't put them down if they don't jump over the pole. We actually reward them if they just swim over the top of it. And so, and then the question comes up: well, what does this have to do with human beings, and how do we train killer, talk or teach human beings based on, what we do with killer whales? And so what it is that if you give love, if you give positive reinforcement, human beings, much like animals, respond effectively, just as effectively as the fear, enough, if not more, because it has a stronger longevity and it creates a wholeness within them. So now you're fostering wholeness in them. Where my new hire classes come in and they're terrified and they're not sure and they're anxious, they're excited, and all at the same time. And when they start out, I start off doing a lot of encouragement and encouraging them to speak. By Monday, they're really nervous. By Wednesday, they're all talking. I have trouble. I have to get them to shut up a little bit, and it's because they start to open up and they start to blossom. It's very much like a flower. If you started screaming at a flower, or if you started hitting the stem, it would actually shake a little bit, and they've proven that. But more importantly, if you start loving it and fostering it and watering it, it's going to start opening up, and it's going to blossom. And that's how people blossom. It's through love. It's not through fear. Fear tells us don't do this because I don't want to feel this awful feeling anymore. But love says, hey, every time I do this, it makes the person I care about or the person I enjoy being around more excited. If it's a child, it makes mommy and daddy happy when I do this, and so then they're going to want to do it again and do it again until they keep on blossoming. And, and then so like Justin's point, you go back and you look at yourself and you hold yourself accountable every day and you look at it and you say, hey, how was my day? Where was my opportunity to grow? That kind of stuff. And that really, if we want to work with the reptilian agenda, we don't want to destroy the reptilian mind. We actually want to love the reptilian mind. And that's actually very much talked about in the movie The Host. And, when the host or the symbiont goes into the person, the human surgeons are wanting to cut it out somehow. And then one of the hosts or the aliens actually come forward and says, what are you doing? And what's happening is every time they try to pull the symbiont out, they not only kill the symbiont, but they also kill the human being. But when the alien comes forward and actually gives love to the symbiont, it falls right out in her hand. So it's really saying to us that within us is this being or this thing that is us. You're not going to get rid of it. You're not going to pulverize it into the corner. Well, you certainly can, but then it's going to be this rabid dog, a rabid animal inside of you, and eventually it's going to be beach balls underwater, and it's going to pop up, and it's going to be unruly at that time, and it's going to snap. So, but if you love it, and every time it talks, you say, I hear what you're doing right there, and I love you for it. Hold off for a second so I can talk to you before you do that. And then you hear what it has to say, and hey, I really appreciate you saying this. Have we considered doing it this way? And yes, people are going to think you're crazy. You're talking to yourself. However, I would rather be crazy talking to myself and enjoy who I am than have this unruly thing inside of me that I never freaking pay attention to. And if I love it...
And you never know when it's going to pop out.
Right.
You never know when it's going to come out and just burn up the room
And bitch
with
slap
everybody in it.
So.
Yeah, bitch slap is right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when this is so real, and that's what I want people to understand. You're not crazy. It really is real. How many times have you had a dialogue standing in front of the mirror? And I mean, I used to have dialogue. I had my own play. I had my, actors. I had the director. I had everybody in it, but I was the star. But then I could really kill everybody in it, or I could be nice and kind. That's real, and that we've got to start these people understanding it's as real can be.
Well, that's
and
the other
when
side
you have
too.
a spiritual, what is it?
I was going to say the other side of it is when you give somebody love, like you were saying, especially yourself. If we define fear, if fear is the state of running away from something, trying to hide yourself from something, then love must be the reverse, which is accepting something, welcoming something.
Absolutely.
Being open.
Allowing it.
Exactly. So when you're allowing.
Allowance is it. Yeah.
Yeah, when you're allowing something, I mean, you're finally becoming aware of something in your experience that now you can gain knowledge of it and become a master of it. You can't master something you don't know anything about, so.
Hey, Justin, do you remember this? Resistance, or allow it to flow. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was just thinking that this is very much like our kitchen broadcast that we had in your kitchen, Justin.
Oh, I love that.
Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah, I remember that, yes.
And then where we had...
you were baking cookies. You and Julian were baking cookies.
Yes, we were.
We had a very cookie day.
It was a wonderful show. We had so much fun.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun. That was a great day. And then didn't we end up on the beach that night? Was that the same night we ended up on the beach?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
Well, guys,
pictures of Julian and all of us.
So what do we want to add on to this? Is there anything else we want to add before we close out?
Well, I just think that if we can really bring this to light, that people are really not, they have an opportunity here to change the world simply by changing themselves. Because when you hold on to a thought, be it negative or positive, if you're holding on to it, you're stagnating the universe by holding on. And when, we want to change, I hear everybody say, I want to change the world. If they would understand, you change your thought, one thought that you're holding on to, and just let it go to allow another thought in, you've already changed the universe.
Yep.
And that is true. It's as simple as simple. But I've also had several spiritual experiences, and that's what I want you to know, too, is you're alive inside. And there is a being in there, and it is the most amazing being there is. But it's not your ego, and it's not your body, but it lives, it breathes within you. And when you come together in oneness, it is the most powerful thing you could ever do on this planet, is that. That's what I want them to know.
Yeah, amen. I'll just dovetail that by saying, the path is simple to know, but it's hard to walk.
Oh, amen.
Because
but it's practicality.
Exactly, and it's one moment at a time, and that's kind of what the universe, in my experience, and I feel like this is confirmed in hearing other people's experiences, is the universe is perfectly tailored for your evolution. So whatever thoughts are coming in your mind, whether you think they're from somebody else or from yourself, whatever experiences you're having, whether you think they were done to you or because you created them happily, all of it's part of your experience, and all of it has something to teach you. So if you can, in those moments when you feel like there's a choice, like we were talking about earlier, everything's a choice point. It's a lot easier to pick up that $50 bill and just put it in your pocket than it is to say, hey, you might have dropped this you dropped this $50 bill. So every action that spreads love, every action that is in truth and honoring the free will of others and in trust is something that is ultimately going to build a harmonious life around us. Each action.
And change the world.
Exactly. And change
the world. And people ask me, how can I change the world? I said, change yourself.
Yeah, and I'll probably just
That's it.
let me end this because it's an old saying that everybody's heard, and it's be the change you want to see in the world. And that is not about necessarily getting out with all the actions. That's part of it, but it's also changing you first, because when you change you, the love of it that's in you is going to spill out. The love you have for yourself is going to spill out onto the world. And when you have that, it's just this flow of love that's spilling out from you, and then it's going to come back, and because everything we put out there comes back tenfold. So if we're giving out love, we're going to have love experiences. If we're giving out anxiety and fear and angst, we're going to have anxiety, fear, and angst experiences. And there's a difference. Justin and Julian actually did a very powerful show probably about 3 years ago, and it's wizardry versus magic, if I remember, or sorcery.
Sorcery, yeah.
And basically it's about we can talk about this on another show, but it's basically about forcing our will onto other people as opposed to being in flow. Yeah. Well, why would we force our will on another person? Because we're fearing losing something, or we're lack, or whatever. And it's no different than Jenny being stolen from earlier. It's the reptilian mind saying, I don't have enough. This is not enough. I have to have this. And then greed comes in, and angst comes in, and all this other kind of stuff. And so then we force our will. And incidentally, you don't have to do a ritual to force our will on somebody or some kind of spell. Mm-hmm. We can do that with our mind and our intentions being so intense and so strong. So when you're out there working with people, and when you're falling in love or you're dating and stuff like that, don't force your will onto somebody. Love has nothing to do with forcing your will. It has everything to do with allowing. And when you go into your jobs and your careers or your businesses, you don't want to force your will on another person. You want them to be there as a customer, or you want to have that job because it was in the divine order of things, meaning it was meant to be the natural order. And so, and anytime you're forcing your will onto something, it will come back, because it didn't come from a place of love. It came from a place of fear or lack, and that just creates more of what you don't want. So I'll just kind of leave there with that, because the reptilian mind can trick you. It is very deceptive, and it can continue to
and it's ancient.
And until you have a healthy relationship with it, it's going to keep on trying to trick you. Once you have a healthy relationship with it, it's going to be like, I'm kind of feeling this, and you can be like, I hear what you're saying. Let's think about this for a second. And so, but yeah, I think that's a wrap, folks. What do you think?
All right. Sounds good. Well,
Sounds
it was a
good to me.
Jeremy. Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad to see you again. When Jeremy comes, I wish you'd come down here.
I know. I should come down. When is that going to be again?
Hold on. I'm going to stop the recording real quick. Everybody, have a wonderful evening, and thanks for watching.
All right.
And many blessings.